And if you talk to many Liberians in the diaspora, especially in places like North America, Europe, and Australia, we always make the case that Liberians in the diaspora are the lifeline of the Liberian economy, right? Largely through remittances, and rightfully so. I do agree. We also can admit that Liberians in the diaspora, Liberian organizations in the diaspora, whether it's in North America, in Europe, or in Australia, are also well poised and well positioned to do for themselves exactly what other international NGOs have been doing for decades, coming to Liberia, securing funding, and doing all of these projects and getting the trust from international partners compared to local Liberian organizations, right? In fact, if anything, I would argue that Liberian organizations are in fact well placed to raise more money than the Liberian government can raise, right? Put it in perspective. The Liberian government budget is $500 million, right? Think about it. We are sitting in a diaspora where one foundation, private foundation, is sitting on $1 billion or more than $1 billion. We're in the diaspora in places where there are more money available to be given to organizations who can show themselves worthy of the cost and who can show themselves credible enough for the taking, including from governments, by the way. So the question that we're trying to face today, why then are we seeing this deficit with Liberian organizations to the point where we've seen them in a strangulated situation as what they can do and what they're able to mobilize to be able to impact the homeland, right? Many of us ask that question, what is going on? When we look at other organizations, when we look at the news all of the time in other countries, you wonder why people are raising so much money. I'm going to tackle a few things that I think are the reasons. But before I even do that, let me restate again, the Liberian diaspora, especially in North America, in Europe, and in Australia, is well poised to raise an unspeakable amount of money and mobilize resources that can impact in Liberia in ways that even the government would not be able to complete, right? So let's address then what's missing. What is the missing link? Let me look at the first thing here we'll look at. Mission and vision. Most Liberian organizations are not very clear on their mission and vision. Why do they exist? What are they trying to do? Especially when you come to community associations, right? Most Liberian organizations believe their job is to do everything. Education, they're doing it. Healthcare, they're doing it. Agriculture, they're doing it. And I agree, because in Liberia, everything at such a state of emergency that it's so easy to find yourself wanting to just tackle everything, because everywhere you turn, there is a problem. But the challenge with that is not how it works. You have to organize yourself in a specific area of expertise most of the time to be able to focus so much to get the results that you need to get. So for most funders and where resources are available, the mission and vision of most Liberian organizations are not very clear. That's one. The next thing is that in that same number one, or in that same point, the mission and vision of these organizations are disconnected from their reality. When you look at them, their reality is far disconnected from the vision and the mission. For example, an organization will tell you they exist to ensure rape is eradicated in Liberia, right? However, that organization does not even have one staff that they are able to pay. So if I'm a funder, I look at your mission, say, your mission is to eradicate rape in Liberia, but you cannot even afford to pay one staff. The immediate question that comes to my mind is how? And don't get me wrong, wishful thinking is great. Hoping that things get better is great. Advocacy is great. But if you say your mission is to eradicate rape in Liberia, then we need a little more than that. The big word that people use for it is you don't have a strategic plan. You hear people say that all of the time. If you're going to work to eradicate rape in Liberia, what are you going to do in the short term in the next year or 2 years to make sure you are on track to achieve that? What are you going to do in 5 years? What is the timeline that you're working to eradicate rape in Liberia? Is it in 10 years? Is it in 15 years? Is it also realistic? Is it possible? Right? So that alone makes a funder to know that as much as you are tackling something so serious and something so important, it makes a funder to think that you don't know what you're doing because you haven't fully grasped what it will take to tackle the issue of rape. How are you going to do it? With one man running this foundation or one woman running the foundation? How are you going to do it with a bunch of volunteers who can only help whenever they are available and whenever they are able? How are you going to do it with your low paycheck that you have to take small things from this side by side and do all of that? Don't get me wrong. Helping with your low paycheck, helping with your volunteering hours is all great. But to address such a matter is going to take something more robust and something more deep and steeper and more accountable than just what you say. So two things, right? Most Liberian organizations, their vision and missions are not even clear. So what is a vision and a mission? Most of them don't even understand the difference between, most people do not get the difference between a vision and a mission. What are those two things? They're not the same. And don't get me wrong, don't feel bad if you're one of those people. Myself, for a long time, I struggle with it. It can be very confusing. So here is it. Let's look at what a vision is. Your vision is what will change in this world as a result of the work that you want to do. What impact? That's on a broader, larger scale. So for example, if I say to myself, I want to ensure as many girls' children can access education as much as possible. That's a vision. I want the world to become a place where access to education for girls' children in Liberia is a possibility. That's a vision. A vision is something that gets achieved over 10 to 20 years of consistent work and effort and focus, right? So for example, the Rotary International Foundation had a vision of making polio, of eradicating polio in the world. They joined with the Bill Gates Foundation. They set that vision many years ago. And right now they are close. I think they're almost close to 90% of polio eradicated in the world. But this has taken them over 3-4 decades of consistent work. That's a vision. Now, what is a mission? Your mission will include the things that you must do to accomplish your vision. So I gave the example of Rotary International Foundation, right? They set a vision to eradicate polio in the world. Guess what? They have to raise millions of dollars, tens of millions over the years to make sure enough polio vaccines are manufactured, to make sure that they have teams in almost every single country in some of the most remote parts of the world to ensure that children who were dealing with polio had access to vaccines. Right? This operation has taken hundreds of millions of dollars. Right? So that has been their mission, to ensure that every country has a team, to ensure that there are vaccines everywhere, so that they can combat the situation of polio, right? So the difference between a vision and a mission is that a vision is the long-term goal that you hope to achieve to impact the world on a broader scale. Your mission are the things which are your short-term activities, the things that you would do every day to ensure that you achieve that goal in the next 20 years, right? So that's one reason why Liberian organizations are struggling. Let's come to another reason why Liberian organizations are struggling. We only know how to spend money. We don't spend a lot of time in thinking about how we can raise and mobilize funds. So as a result of that, we think just because we are taking on something important or because we have a great idea to change Liberia, somebody with money is obligated to give us money. No, it doesn't work that way. Or the Liberian government should be supporting us financially. No, it doesn't work that way. If you believe in your idea and you're a non-for-profit association or a private organization or whatever that is, you have a responsibility to mobilize the resources required to accomplish your mission and your vision. If you cannot connect your vision and your mission to the resources that you are raising and to the revenue that you are generating, then you're wasting everybody's time. You cannot say you have a mission to make sure 200 girls' children access education next year in Liberia, but at the same time, you say the entire money you are able to raise the whole year is $2,000. You see the difference? And you say, no problem, we'll just try. Even if we get filed, then this year to go, filed, then we'll go. Then don't say you're sending 200 children to school, right? So your revenue, our ability, you can't have an idea and you think as a private organization, it's somebody else's responsibility to give you the money only because they have money. So we are seeing this constant frustration with a lot of brilliant Liberians in the diaspora who are coming up with great ideas and great organizations. But they think because the issue they are tackling is so important, the government has a responsibility to support them. or rich people have the responsibility to support them. So you hear people make the argument that the Liberian community does not support their own initiatives. I beg to differ. If you're going to come up with an idea, a vision, and a mission to change something in Liberia, then you have the responsibility to mobilize the resources required. And guess what? It is not the Liberian community responsibility. It is your responsibility to convince the Liberian community and anybody else with money why they should entrust you with their resources for you to go do what you say you want to do. Number one, you have to also convince them that what you say you want to do, in fact, is the right thing. In fact, it's the way to solve the problem. So you see a lot of brilliant young Liberians wanting to do stuff. They blame Liberians for not supporting them because you didn't do your job. As a leader, you failed to convince the constituents that you are hoping to solicit that it's important for me to do the thing. You please give me your money. It's like elections. If you can convince the voters to cast a ballot for you, it's not the voters' failure. It's the failure of the leaders to do what it was required of them to convince, or what was required of them to convince voters to vote for them. You hear all the time politicians will say, oh, the voters are crazy. The voters don't know who they want. No, you did not convince them. The other person on the other side did an incredible job of convincing them, even if that person's idea was not the right idea. But to get the vote, it's not about who has the right idea. It's about who's able to convince the voting population to vote for them. So if you give up on convincing the voters to acquire the amount of votes you need, and you will not focus on the fact that you had a great idea, you will not win an election. Elections are not won by great ideas only. Elections are won by the conviction and ability to drive the voters in your direction. So you see, that's the number two reason. We have not focused as Liberian institutions and organizations in the diaspora. We have not focused on building the robust processes, institutions, the inspiration that is required to generate the revenue that we need to do the work we want to do. So we blame everybody else who has money and doesn't give it to us. It doesn't work that way. Just because somebody from Liberia has a lot of money doesn't mean they should come and give it to you because you think your idea is a noble idea. There are hundreds of thousands of noble ideas out there. Just because your priority is getting girls to go to school, that doesn't mean it's the priority of the people who got money. No. If you want to come up with a vision and a mission, part of that should be your ability to generate revenue. What good is it coming up with a budget to buy food for your house, but you can't raise the money that's needed to actually go to the market, but you got a budget in your hand, and you're angry and say, because people not give you a job to get the money, it is the people's fault. The third thing I will focus on, remember, the first thing I talk about is lack of clarity in vision and mission, right? That's the first thing I talk about. The second thing I just spoke about is the inability to connect our revenue generation or fundraising to our vision and mission in a way that inspires and convinces people to contribute to it. Okay, say Liberian people can support their own thing, that's great. Ask yourself, how come you're not successful with the other people now who are not Liberians? So those are the first two things. Let's go to the third thing. The third thing is arrogance and incompetence. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Not everybody can be a CEO. Not everybody can be an executive director. Not everybody can start a non-for-profit or a business. It takes specific sets of skills to be able to do some of these things. It takes a specific set of discipline to be able to do some of these things successfully. Just because you have a brilliant idea, just because you are so passionate and care about something, does not mean you have the ability to see it come through. This is where we get all the one-man show, where you're the executive director, you're the treasurer, you're the officer, you're the frontline worker, you everything, and whatever you decide is what your foundation will do. You need to ask yourself, first of all, is the organization a public organization or your private organization? Because once you get something a 501c3 in the US or a charitable status in Canada, I'm sorry, it is not a public institution and is subject to public scrutiny and is subject to meeting the needs of the public. If you can't do that, the public will criticize you, and rightfully so. So that is the third thing, incompetence and arrogance. We have a lot of people. I have one of my professors who always reminds me this, that the highway to hell is paved with good intentions. Just because you have a good intention doesn't mean we should not subject you to the same level of accountability and scrutiny that is required. So we have a lot of people who are incompetent to accomplish a certain job, but because they brought up the ideas, because they started the organization, so they are convinced that only them have to be the boss because they're afraid for somebody coming to kick them out of their organization. Let me break the news to you. If you start a public organization, you're supposed to put the right institutions in place, like a board of directors, who will have the right to fire you or to hire you. If they got reason to fire you, even though you are the founder of the organization, the board should be able to fire you and hire another leader because you're not capable of doing the job. How many Liberian organizations you know are willing to subject themselves to that? Please tell me. How many? And we wonder why we're not doing well. Sheer incompetence and arrogance. That is the reason why. The final reason I would dwell on before I go off that we're not doing well is the mischaracterization of our interest in politics and mixing it with these organizations that are supposed to be nonprofits. We start all these organizations under the pretense, so most of the time, that we're trying to do something innocent to help the country. And in the midst of it, harness our political egos and aspirations and use it or want to use it or attempt to use it as a platform for exploiting political gains in Liberia. And that is where things go wrong. That is where things go wrong. The fourth thing, if you want to go for politics, that's what you want to do in Liberia, work your way out. Good on you. Kudos to you. And if you want to start a non-for-profit to use it as a stepping stone to get to politics, be honest about it and say it. I don't even think they'll allow you to get status. But we cannot keep creating these machinations, deceiving people, thinking we're doing one thing when the truth is we have other motives for which we're doing other things. Do we have some comments to go through? We'll take a quick break and hear from you, our viewers, and let's interact with you a little bit from some of the comments. If you have questions or comments, please post them, and we will make sure to actually read them on the show. But I wanted to see if we can take the time, I don't know if we're ready in the back end, to see if we have some comments that we can actually go through. So non-for-profit organizations are not political organizations. We in the diaspora, by the time something happening politically in Liberia, all the Liberian organizations that want to issue press release about it. Musu Wangolo Stewart said, thanks for stressing that point on non-for-profit organization. Most don't understand. Thank you, Musu. Thank you for joining us and participating. William Doma is watching from MPLS, grooving on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you, Willette, for joining us. Jefferson Koko is watching from South Korea. Thank you, Jefferson. Again, those of you who are watching, please share your thoughts with us. I know sometimes you want to call in and we are not able to take calls, but if you can post your comments also, we'll be able to read the comments out so that people can hear your thoughts as well. And if you disagree, we're happy to hear your disagreement. All right? So let me dig deeper on some of the ways we can solve these problems. If you are interested in starting a nonprofit, if you are interested in starting a charitable organization, or anything for that matter, my first encouragement to you would be speak to someone who has done it successfully. I don't care if they are Liberian. If you are lucky to find a Liberian, even better, because there will be more context for you. Speak to someone who you consider an expert in the field, not an expert just based on what they've studied, but an expert based on what they've been able to accomplish. That's the first step. The second step, be willing to listen to their advice and take it into serious consideration. Because some of you will go to someone with your brilliant ideas. When they hear it and honestly tell you, say, this is not the way to go, this will not work, you get upset with them. You get upset with them because they're not willing to agree with you. You get upset because you think your idea is so noble, how would somebody think it wouldn't work? Be willing. The first thing you want to do, if you want to start a nonprofit, a charitable organization, whatever it is, consult with someone who's done it well. Seek their advice and opinion and be willing to listen to it and give it serious consideration. The next thing you need to do, evaluate if you are capable of doing what your vision is. Many of us have big ideas. Some of us have ideas about rebuilding a whole country. But have we evaluated to think to ourselves and ask ourselves, do I have the ability? Am I capable? Do I have the capacity to do it now? If the answer is say no, don't get it started because you will fail. You will fail. Evaluate. And what does evaluation mean? Do you have the resources? Do you have the skill set? Do you have the experience? No, most of us can say, you know what, let's just start. We'll just start. It will be doing it small, small. Hey, I'm not saying starting and doing it small, small doesn't work. But that will be enough to get you where you need to go. That is why we all need to make sure as we are pushing together, we are not just castigating each other. Musu Stewart again, most Liberians register as a public nonprofit, but the intention is private so as to have control. I agree with you, Musu, and we forget the reasons for which we even register. And I know when these things happen, like the recent case with Eula, everybody came up, and bashing Eula. But when I listen to some of the interviews from people who agree and people who disagree, even the Eula leadership, it is clear that there is a disconnect within the Eula leadership of understanding what the implications of everything will be. I don't think there's a clear understanding, and this is not a criticism of Eula. This is just an observation that if they understood the complexity and everything involved with accepting a direct donation from the Liberian government in Liberia, maybe they would have thought it twice. But who knows? If Eula was raising millions of dollars, like it should, because of where it's situated and what it's possible for it to do, if Eula was raising millions of dollars, I don't think Eula would be chasing $100,000 donation in the midst of all this chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, let's think twice. Ladies and gentlemen, let's ask ourselves, where are we? We cannot say we are sitting in one of the richest parts of the world. We cannot say we have access to the largest amount of resources that ever existed in human history. Here where we are, there's so much for the taking. And at the same time, go to where there's so much scarcity and expect that our ideas, because they're good enough, somebody should give us money. I keep saying it. The Liberian government budget is $500 million. They don't have enough money to take care of their responsibilities. They don't have it. And this is not about Eula and the Liberian government giving any organization a dime, ladies and gentlemen. This is about us understanding why a donation of $100,000 to Eula from the Liberian government could be detrimental to Eula in and of itself more than the benefit of that money. You always have to ask yourself, does the benefit outweigh the cost? And if the benefit outweigh the cost, then you forego the benefit. And we're using Eula as an example. But many other Liberian organizations in the diaspora would have gladly taken that money. Let's not pretend because it's Eula on the hot seat. Other Liberian organizations could have taken it. Does that mean they should be taking it? I say no. Does that mean it's a criticism? I also say no, because we are calling on people to dig deeper, build the understanding and the education needed to have the sophistication to understand something like if I were in that situation and the Liberian government made $100,000 donation, I would have engaged with the Honorable Minister of State and say, Honorable Minister, what a gesture. And we thank you for your support to Eula. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to work with you for that $100,000 that you're donating to redirect it to some of our sisters and brothers organizations on the ground that are doing so much robust work. Since you have $100,000 to give to civil society to help you, let's redirect it. Brenna Brewer Keep is in Liberia doing exploits. How can we not redirect $100,000 to Brenna Brewer? Why do we need to take it and bring it to America before we take it back to Liberia? I'm just calling point in the nonprofit sector. would have been my response. We got a comment here from Tipla Popo Pupo. There are so many things they can do to generate funds. ULA should be ashamed of themselves. I agree with you, Tipla, but this is not a ULA problem. This is the broader Liberian organization problem in the diaspora. All of us. Very few organizations, Liberian organizations, you find that raise the amount of money needed that is consistent with their mission. Most Liberian organizations come up with these grandiose mission. They think the bigger the idea, then you look good on paper. Most Liberian organizations have mission and vision that they will never ever be able to accomplish for the rest of their existence. Tipla say again, the government should not give you like a dime. Let them find money themselves. Thank you, Tipla. I don't know the government reasons for doing that, but I think we want to address the bigger problem. And the bigger problem is not with just ULA. The bigger problem is the Liberian associations in the diaspora, how they are set up, how they operate, the realistic nature of their vision and mission that comes back to haunt them. These are just observations that I'm making. I just have to share my 2 cents about it. And here's the final piece also. Reporting and accountability. That's what I asked the last time. I asked somebody at ULA, where was the turnover financial report and progress report from the previous administration to this administration? Do we have that? If we have it, can we publish it? Where is ULA year in, year out financials that we can see? If you're going to start raising some serious money from people, you're under obligation to show to them how their money is spent. So let's look at it critically. Let's ask ourselves, should Liberian organizations be positioning themselves to become the de facto source of sustainable development in Liberia beyond the capability of the government, which is just $500 million? How can we be fighting over the Liberian government $500 million budget when we are registered organizations in the United States, in Canada, and Europe? This should be our strength. The Liberian diaspora should be so organized, and community organizations, private organizations should be so organized that when we say JFK Hospital does not have a bed, we can mobilize ourselves and set up a 10-year campaign with JFK Hospital to think about how we can bring a solution to the constant logistics and supply situation at JFK. That's real change. And maybe in the short term, we could provide them beds immediately to treat the patients out of there. UL, I asked the last time, where are the UL University of Liberia alumni? If I live in the UL, go to Talkman High, the great Talkman High. Minister of Finance currently, right there from Talkman High. A lot of people walking in Monrovia, very well achieved and successful financially, right there from Talkman High. But it doesn't click to their mind. We don't mobilize ourselves to say, how do we strategically get involved in the process of nation building and sustainable development? Let's see some of our comments here. Our own brother and friend here from Focus on Liberia, Anthony CS, says, the political bulldog says, what about the chaos and conflict these Liberian organizations are in? Most cases engulfed with. What is the responsibility? What is responsible for that? And would that impede the possibility of raising funds? Yes. If Anthony, if your organization is in chaos constantly, the bull fighting the president fighting the bull as to who has more power. The number one reason why there is constant chaos in these Liberian associations and organizations is simply because people who are put in charge do not have the understanding of how these organizations should be set up. In most cases, they themselves do not understand their own roles. The president does not clearly understand his or her role. The board does not understand their role. So as a result of that, the president thinks they're supposed to be having certain powers and it becomes about power and who have much control. That's the reason why I said before you start one of these organizations, consult somebody who has done this successfully. Musu Wangolo still has a lack of accountability. Insult those who ask, but keep asking you for donations. It doesn't work. Even angels in heaven will not keep giving if you don't account. Even God. This is crazy. And the sooner we can get a hold of it, the better. That is the reason why we've gotten to the point where we are only good at showing how bad everything is in Liberia. Nobody is able to help you understand what can we do to fix it or make it better. Hey, don't take my word for it. Look around you. Name me how many Liberian associations you know are not in chaos. Name me how many Liberian organizations you know that are not struggling to raise even $5,000 the whole year. So the first thing, so we have a comment here, focus on Liberia. So how can we fix these issues, Leo? Yes, the first place to actually fix it. Before you set up these organizations, consult with someone who's done it well. Just because you think you are working on Capitol Hill in Liberia, or because you are chairman of the Women Association or the Men Association, does not mean you have the competence to do what it takes. Number two, ensure that we are bringing people with the track record of running these organizations. When you take your money to the bank to go and invest, you don't take it to the money changer booth and give it to the money changer and say, do something of magic and make it come back. You look for investment bankers who have the track record. You get your money to them. Do the same thing with this. Let's stop setting up more organizations without understanding what their rules are. And if we can find an expert in our community, go outside of the community is the first thing to do. The second thing to do is clearly lay out the mission and vision of these organizations. What are these organizations existing to do? What should we hold them accountable for? And then answer the clear question, do you have the capacity, the resources, or do you have the ability to mobilize, raise the resources needed to effectively accomplish the mission of the organization, including hiring staff and paying the people who should make it work? That's how it's supposed to be. The next thing, make your reports. If you're not able to do report, you've never done one in your life, come to the community or to the organization, let them know so that they can find somebody who can do the report. And if the board thinks that you are not competent because of that, they will fire you. Let it be okay for them to fire you even when you are the founder. And to the Liberian associations and Liberian community organizations, where we got a lot of people sitting there who consider themselves to be well accomplished. When I own a man or own a Jew or own a woman there, causing all the corrupting, you sit there and pretend like you don't know what question we're supposed to ask. But as soon as the person leaves and someone else comes through, then you set on a mission to destroy anything they touch. Not because it's not the best idea, but simply because you have vowed that this person should never succeed in this organization, should never have credit to give to them. I've said this over and over. Musu Wangolo Stewart said that's the problem. They don't embrace those who have knowledge of the process. And that is why those who have knowledge of the process need to start building outside of the process so that they can show evidence that the knowledge that they have of the process is not only limited to theory, it's also within the practical realm of responding to the needs of what they're trying to address. Anthony said, what are some of the good wills we can tap into? Many good wills we can tap into. Number one, people out there are willing to give. For those of us in the fundraising world, will tell you the number one reason why people don't give is because they don't get asked. We come up with all these brilliant things we are doing, we tell everybody, then we leave, hoping that because they heard that we are doing something good, they will just dash us. It don't work like that. Two, let's stop trying to raise money through events. It is extremely difficult to raise money through events. Most of the time, it's a lose-lose situation. You may be wondering why I said that. If you calculate how much work goes into doing an event, if you calculate how much financial and human resources goes into it, the logistics and everything, if you are paying everybody on the hour, the only way that event makes money if you're selling the ticket for $500 a ticket. Why not engage in a more robust individual way? That's what it should be done. That's how it should be done. We are where we are as a community simply because we have been unable to look at how we can generate resources. What are some of the good wills? Foundations, private foundations out there. I can go right now and search and find you 20 grants that are available right now, begging for organizations to apply for the money. And just because they are begging for organizations to apply for the money doesn't mean any incompetent organization that does not have the evidence to prove that they are capable of spending that money can apply for it. You got to meet the requirements. But the requirements are all possible to meet. But because you don't want to be accountable, that's why we are where we are. That's why where we are, because nobody can trust that they can give us $20 million. USAID can trust. Forget USAID. Donors were able to trust Katie Myler from More Than Me, a Academy that got engulfed in a rape situation, to give her millions of dollars and her organization to go do that in Liberia and other NGOs. But have you wondered why these same international organizations that are providing this funding in the diaspora, Liberian organizations are not able to tap into those fundings and access some of those resources? Have you ever wondered? Musu Wangolo Stewart said the best mechanism for nonprofit organizations to benefit Liberia is the private nonprofit. Public mechanism is not effective for Liberians. Musu, let me respectfully disagree. What a public nonprofit is, it doesn't mean it's controlled by the government. It's just any nonprofit you register by law, whether it's in the US or it's a public institution. You don't own it. It can be your private institution because the nonprofit sector says directors shall not in any way benefit directly from any proceeds of the organization, including you. So you can go open an organization, register it with the government, allow the government to give you tax-exempt status where you give tax receipt and everything, and you come back and say the institution are your private institution. It doesn't work that way. Moma Harris say event revenues are good, but you must balance them with government and foundation fundings. I agree with event revenue. I'm just saying other hours. Listen, let me give you a succinct example. To organize an event, a good event, you need at least 6 months to a year ahead of time to organize it properly. You need hundreds of people being involved to help you do it. The logistics, incredible. Let me tell you this. If I have 50 coffee meetings, if I want to raise $10,000, I need to have 100 coffee meetings, 100 meetings with individuals in the coffee shop and ask them whether they donate $100 to my cause. And 90% of the time it's been successful. I raised the $10,000. So don't get me wrong. Event revenues are great or whatever, but at what cost? Is that a good use of time? I think events should be used to celebrate success and to showcase success. It shouldn't be used for fundraising. It doesn't really. Some organizations still do well by putting it in the events bag, whatever, or in wherever fundraising pot you got to put it in. But events don't do well because they are very expensive. You have to always focus. If you are a fundraiser or revenue generator, like I like to be, you have to always focus on low risks and high impact. Events is always 50-50. Plenty of people might buy a ticket and plenty of people may not show up. Musu said, that's not what I'm saying. I meant citizens that start their own private nonprofit. Musu, I hear you, but I'm saying it can't be private. It's not called private. So you're not saying the same thing. It's not private, it's public. It's owned by the public. Public just means it's not owned by the government. It's owned by taxpayers. Anthony said, is it ever possible to raise millions from Liberians in the diaspora? Yes, Anthony, it's possible to raise millions from Liberians in the diaspora. But that cannot be done through voodoo economics. The robust platform must be built. The governance processes must be put in place. The institution must be solid. And don't start raising the money from Liberians first. Start to convince others, since your own Liberians are skeptical. Everybody loves to be on a winning team. When you prove that you can do that and you can raise money, trust me, you'll be shocked as to the reaction from Liberians. But that's where we are. That is where we are. And those are my observations and my thought processes on it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring it home here so we can kind of wrap it up. The issue of revenue generation in Liberian diaspora is a classic example of a disconnect of reality from wishful thinking. Let's stop the wishful thinking. The Simple Katie Mala and More Than Me Academy came and raised millions. We all sitting here. What stopped us from being assisted? Katie Mala only told our story. How come we're here? We cannot tell our own story to raise millions from it. But white people can go to Liberia, bring our stories back and raise millions. I'm saying it's possible to raise millions from Liberians. And you don't have to limit it to Liberians, Anthony, because anybody who cares about Liberia, if you present the right vision to them, they will contribute. I am a living witness. I'm doing a $2 million project in Liberia through my organization. And we've seen significant contributions come from Liberians. What more do we need? We just need to work. We need to put in the time. We need to put in the hours. We need to put in the understanding. And we need to accept the reality. And we need to work within our means. We need to embrace competence. We need to embrace success. We need to model success. Busu's been busy. Busu said, believe me, that thought has been tried and proven ineffective. We have to first learn to be accountable. That's a challenge. So Musu, what I'm doing right now, Musu, where has it been ineffective? I run a nonprofit organization that's a public institution. I founded it. I'm the executive director, but the board has power to fire me or hire me. Is it not the reality? I'm willing to take that risk so I can be out of a job if I don't do my job. So let's do what we got to do. Because even to the point where people who got money in Liberia, it's difficult. Because you know what? We have not created the vehicles of accountability and transparency for people who got money to figure out how they can use some of their wealth to elevate our country's future. We often forget that just because somebody has a lot of money doesn't mean the person fully understands how to deploy that money for the good of the community. Well, you think that's easy. Wait till you get money and start to realize the difficulty involved with that. So Liberian organizations in the diaspora have a perfect opportunity to start to create vehicles through which Liberians who got money, even in the diaspora, can put some of that money through there in a way that makes sense. For example, my organization is a registered charity in Canada. So we work with the IRS in the US to agree to give us a tax-deductible status in the US. So if somebody donates right now to our efforts in Liberia, we are able to give them a tax receipt so that at the end of the year, depending on what tax bracket they are in, they can get up to 65% of that money back. That is if, let's say if you donate $5,000, you can get $3,500 back. Yeah, these tools are there. These are vehicles that give wealthy people the incentive and non-wealthy people the incentive to contribute. In Liberia, we got no tools. But we expect people who have earned their money to just continue to dump it into charity, even though there are no results. There are no regulations. Everybody free for all can do what they want. Let's get real. Let's get practical, people. I didn't intend to be here for long today. I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank everybody for listening in. Let's share this message. Let's continue to hammer it. Let's continue to support our organizations to help them to understand that it is not easy. You can start an organization and you run it today, you're running your club. It's not possible. You got to elevate it to the level that makes it accountable for its vision and its mission. If you cannot accomplish your vision and mission, if you don't have the capacity, the resources to accomplish it, then you must stop. It doesn't work. If you say you want to send 20 children to school every year, you cannot raise $10,000 to send 20 children to school every year, then stop, because you are incapable of accomplishing that mission and that vision. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. It's been a great time joining here on the Liberian Dream with revenue generation in the Liberian diaspora. I want to thank you so much and have yourself a wonderful, wonderful week coming up.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.